Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting video. So in today's video we will discuss about seaplanes. Now imagine you're on an aircraft taking off, winds calm, everything, you're taking off from an airport and you settle into your seat. Now let's reimagine that situation again where you're sitting in a seat comfortable, but instead of the airport there is water surrounding you, and instead of the runway the water is your runway. So we're going to discuss how this is possible and how seaplanes make travel accessible from the water. So now let's first talk about what is a seaplane. The seaplane is a type of fixed wing aircraft which is not like traditional aircrafts. So the seaplane uses the water as its runway. Traditional aircrafts use concrete or better yet tarmacs, the runways to take off and land on. Seaplanes land on water, which means the water is their airfield. Now we have talked about the definition of a seaplane. Well, I do not have a model of an actual seaplane, but I did buy one, not for this video, but I'll explain why I got it. So before that, I'll show you the manual of the thing which I built. So this is the Lego Technic seaplane set which I got. So this is the one. So it's great. It's actually functioning propeller spin. So once you push this gear, the propeller starts spinning, and I'm gonna explain in the end of the video why I bought this in the first place. Now we're gonna talk about the two types of seaplanes. Now you can tell what is there in types of seaplanes. A seaplane takes off and lands on water. Well, no. So there are two types of seaplanes. First one, float planes. So these are traditional fixed wing aircraft with the landing gear removed, and in place of their landing gear they have this so-called floats attached to them. Sorry. So these so-called float planes basically work like a regular aircraft, but instead of having wheels they have floats like this one here. Next one. Now, did you know that seaplanes actually follow two rules instead of just one? Now, I'll tell you how. So, when a seaplane like this is flying in the air, it works as an aircraft. So, it follows all the aviation regulation standards. But the moment it touches water, all that thing goes out of the window, all those rules. It functions as a boat and has to follow maritime regulations. How cool is it? An aircraft has to follow two rules. One, while it's in the sky, it functions as an aircraft, but once it lands on the water, it does not get treated like an aircraft, it gets treated like a boat. Now we have talked about float planes. Let's go on to the next type of thing. So, the next one is amphibious float planes. So these are um, the type of float plane, but instead of having their wheels removed, they have their wheels and these so-called floats also. But once they are up in the air and want to land somewhere, for example on ground, they can extend their wheels from the floats and land. So amphibious, they can both land on water by keeping their wheels inside and landing on the floats, and also by lowering their wheels and landing on the runway. So it's amphibious, works on land and as well as water. Next one, flying boats. So these are not your typical float planes because they don't have a float nor a thing which helps them to land on water and on land. So these are shaped like a boat which have a hull, which is designed to float on water. If you have seen boats or ships, they have a massive hull which helps them to stay afloat on water. So these planes have the type of hull which helps them to stay afloat on water. Now, for the propellers and everything, it's basically the same. It's a fixed wing design where the propellers are mounted. It's obviously a high mounted propeller, and wings, because every commercial aircraft which we see, beside a few exceptions, are low wing aircrafts, and fighter jets are mid wings. So more on that in another video. These use high winged because you see when they land on water, obviously the wing cannot come in contact with the water, or else it would act as a scoop and break apart. The metal is not just designed to handle that much load. So it stays on top of the it stays on top because the water does not interfere, and also it helps for airflow. Now we have talked about float planes as well as the next type, flying boats. I'm sorry, I had to adjust my camera lighting a bit. So now how they work is actually very interesting, because when I was doing research for this video, I found a few cool facts which I did not know myself. See, the camera adjusted. I was adjusting the lighting to auto mode. So now we are going to talk about how it works. So when a seaplane has to take off from the water, it doesn't matter if it has floats or a giant hull like boats. It doesn't matter if it is a flying boat or regular seaplane. It doesn't matter. If the plane's hull or float is dragged along, it creates a suction. Now I'll explain how it works. So when the float or the hull comes in contact with the water, it creates a suction. So the where the suction comes, I'll explain. So the suction comes in between the float or the hull and in between the water. It creates like this. So it won't allow the plane to take off it, because it acts as a scoop, and which pulls the water, and there's no space for actually the air to flow over these areas, so the plane can lift off. Now you may ask, what is the use of air flowing over the wings then? Yeah, well, air flowing over the wings also has its advantages, and this will help with the lift like this, but only this lift will work when this area or the hull comes out of the water. Now if you look closely at the hull or the floats of a seaplane, you can see a sharp break or a step which comes about halfway down from the hull or the floats. So this thing is very crucial, because when taking off, that actually creates a barrier to this suction between the water and the hull or the floats, and actually allows air to pass over these areas, which also helps the plane to get airborne. Next point. Now, tail rudders are effective when flying the aircraft in the air, but aren't really effective in the water. It is not linked to nose wheel steering in a regular aircraft, because there is no nose wheels unless it is an amphibious aircraft. But we're not going to discuss that. So, these planes also have water rudders which come about halfway down once the plane lands, which go inside the water and helps the pilots to steer when it's on the water. And before takeoff, it is retracted so the plane can obviously take off. Next point. Now comes the usage, the most important point. Now, why do we even need seaplanes? There are regular aircraft, tons of them, and helicopters, which are very good in rescue. Now, let's talk about why we really need them. So, let's come into the first point. Now, accessing remote areas. A regular aircraft can be great, it is very well, I'll accept that. But when it has to land, there is no runway, or better yet, the runway is there but the aircraft cannot land. It's because it's too big, and that is where seaplanes comes into play. Remote areas, areas with no runway but with lots of water, near forest areas. So if people has to get from one place to another, a helicopter will not be an obvious choice, because they're surrounded by forest, but there's a water body nearby big enough for a seaplane to take off and land. So that is where it comes into play, the first point. Next, the second, accessing remote locations. Now, building paved runways can be too expensive or impossible, so this is where it comes into play. Next, island tourism. In places like Greek islands or Maldives, seaplanes serve as a quick regional commuter airlines. It's basically transporting tourists from directly from international airports to resort islands. So, I'll tell you how it works. So, the tourist arrives by a regular plane to the island's main airport. From there, they are taken over to wherever they're staying by a seaplane, because they are islands, they are surrounded with water. Why not make the best out of it? So this is where they come from the regular airport to a dock, where the seaplanes will be docked instead of regular boats. So they hop on a seaplane, the seaplane takes off and lands wherever they are going. Next is the most important point of them all: search and rescue, and even in firefighting. Flying boats are called scoopers, which can land on a lake, scoop up thousands of liters in water to dump in a few seconds. That's why it's called a scooper, because it scoops water thousands of liters in few seconds, and it can take off quickly, go to the site of the fire. This is where it comes to play in firefighting. Drop it, and if the fire is still burning, come back, do it all over again, and repeat the process. So this is where seaplanes are especially useful. Next, without ever needing to return to the airport base, in search and rescue. Now, if a search team is not getting their bearings in, for example, in bad weather or something, they need to return to the airport. But what if there's no airport and there's a water body nearby? They land on it, they wait for the weather, they obviously be in touch with their teams on the mainland, and once they're clear, they take it off, do the rescue, and come back. So now let's talk about some fun facts. Did you know the seaplanes actually carry their own anchors? Because when they're not flying, they're on the water, they act like boats, and they also need to, you know, harness themselves securely to the ground to not move and hit other planes or boats in the area. So they carry their own anchors. Next fun fact, they are shapeshifters. These so called amphibious seaplanes, which I explained, shapeshift, I'm telling it because one moment they have floats, the next moment they want to land on land, they can uh, extend their wheels, so they shape shift. And finally, the most interesting fact of them all, they have reverse gear. It's not like the one which we find in cars or trucks or buses, and it's obviously not the type of reverse gear which I explained in one of my earlier videos. It's how it works is the propellers can be literally turned backwards, and once you give thrust, the propellers which now push the plane forward and up into the sky while taking off is the same one which reverses it. How cool is that? So let me know in the comments, would you rather fly on a regular aircraft on your next trip or rather go on a seaplane? Pretty much I would love to go on a seaplane one day, and if I do, I'll document the vlog of that. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. This was by far one of the most fun videos I've ever made, because it involved a lot of research and some fun facts. And by the way, I'm gonna explain now why I bought this model. Now, this is not a model, this is a Lego set, I'm sorry. So now I'm gonna tell why I bought this. So I finished my midterms, grade 10, and I got very good results. So very good marks, passed with flying colors. So I wanted to buy something which would look cool in my collection, but also look great if I have to keep it somewhere beside me in my room. So I decided on this one, and obviously it's the Lego Technic set. As you can see here, this is the manual to build it. Even though I wanted to make a video that day unboxing this thing and building it just like I did with the Lego firefighting helicopter, I did not have time, because first of all, when I decided I was going to buy this, it was obviously late at night. It was past 8:30 p.m. I guess, and by the time it arrived, it was obviously raining that day. So delivery took a bit longer, and it arrived at almost 9:45. Even though I don't blame it, because they have to be safe, the people who do deliveries, and I didn't want to waste my time, because obviously at school the next day, it was on a weekend. So I finished my dinner, quickly did this. In fact, I finished this entire build in about 1 hour. So this was by far my longest record, because building Legos at least has took me for anything at least 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I literally broke my record. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and have a nice day as always, and bye bye.